And welcome back. We'll be getting started with a little bit of site plan on Illustrator, so I'm really excited to be here and just teach you how we'll go about this. So the first thing I want you to do is open up the template, and that template will be available through your module. So if you go to your site plan line work only page, you can then go down to your template here, click that and download. So make sure to start with that. Okay, and then you might be noticing I'm working on a Mac, and I want to just clarify a few things. So in the world of architecture, it is incredibly common that some people use Mac and some people will use PC for this course. I don't really care which you use. Both will work for the most part. If we're using Revit, there's a chance we won't, but if we were, then we wouldn't use a Mac for that. But I'm an architect that uses Mac. I also use PC, so you may see both in videos, and I'd like to use both because it's super important that you as a student see both interfaces. However, huge disclaimer I will say is that the interface is the same on Illustrator in both PC and Mac. So we're not getting anything different. It's just this top part is a little different. I like to use this because my Mac is super fast and I can create really good crisp videos on here, and it just records nicely and the audio is great. So hope you don't mind that. It really doesn't matter, but I like to explain that. Okay, so a few things I want to talk about is, if you remember from our previous lecture, we talked about going to Window, Workspace, and resetting our essentials. I'd like you to do that just because you never know if some settings get bumped or if you hit a key. That is just good practice when we're starting with Illustrator. I'll do that again. Window, Workspace, reset essentials. And also keep in mind, you can slow me down to half speed. I'd like you to work along with me. So you can put me on a second screen or an iPad, whatever you may need. But I'm going to walk you through this easy peasy, lemon squeezy, and I will show you how to set up a site plan in Illustrator. The first thing I'll have you notice is that this sheet is 11 inches by 17 inches. And so that corresponds with the size tabloid or ledger. And I do that very intentionally. We'll work on scaling eventually and getting a scale on here that shows how many feet are in an inch on your plan, but we won't worry about that now. Right now we're focused on getting our site plan legible. And the first thing I want you to do is click on layers over here and then go down, and do you see how I locked all of your layers? Let's just click and drag down, okay? And I'll do that again for you. So I'm clicking and locking all of these. I just click and drag down and unlock them all. And that way we can work on them. And I have different lines going on here, different layers. I have base image, thick lines, medium, thin, and thinnest lines. And this is very strategic here. What I'm doing is that we're categorizing different line weights by importance. So I'd like to call your attention back to our module page, where if you go here, I outline everything that you need to draw for your site, okay? It includes homes, sidewalks, ponds, trees, etc. And if you go down, I require different things for different sites. Just because these sites are so different, it's super important that we are doing the same amount of work. Liberty Park is clearly much larger than the Daybreak Park, so I'm including more context on that Daybreak side. So read through these. And then what I want to call your attention to is the portion called layers down here, is that I have different layers here. And different thicknesses of lines create hierarchy. And this isn't anything new. We've covered this in previous lectures, but we've talked about hierarchy, for example, on our boards lecture that we had. We've also covered them on arc drawings that serve. But hierarchy of line showcases thicker lines, that thicker lines are more important to the site. And so here is what I'd like you to do. So if you'd like, I'm going to actually take a screenshot of this and put it into my file. But I have my thinnest lines as trees, thin lines as sidewalks, grassy areas, changes in ground texture, medium, public art, roads, etc. Thick lines, existing buildings, basic shape of play equipment, dashed outline of play areas, decorative, that should say fountains, I'm sorry, decorative fountains, water features, etc. So make sure to pay attention to this, and that'll walk you through the whole entire process. But we need to start drawing. In order to draw, we need something to reference. And what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to lock all of those. I'm only working on my base image layer at this time. And in order to prepare myself, I am just going to drag and drop in that screenshot, okay? And keep in mind, That may look different from your computer. I'm using a Mac, so I'm using the Finder app that's on a Mac, which is essentially my desktop. So if you're using a PC, you can just drag and drop from your desktop. That's really the only difference we'll be encountering today. And then if you notice, it copied it into a different layer, or excuse me, a different file, which is fine. I'm just going to hit Control or Command X, and that'll cut that. And then I can come in here and I can do Command or Control V. Okay, and then oops, that's actually a good lesson. I need to be on a layer that's unlocked, so it will allow me to paste that. And I know this says base image, and this isn't a base image, but I'm actually just going to put this off to the side. And one thing you may have noticed is that I made it smaller. Look what I have to do. I have to click Shift, otherwise it does this, and this is super annoying. So we must click Shift in order to ensure that we're maintaining the proportion of the image, so we'll have to click Shift. And then what I'll do with that is I'll just plop it in the corner right there for me to reference. All right, and now I need a base image. So right here, there's a number of things I could do, and I'm not going to use either of your sites. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use an area outside of the architecture building on our campus. That way, I'm not giving anyone an advantage here by doing their project for them. And what I'll do is I'll simply open up a new tab, and I have a few options that I can do here. I can go to Google Maps, or I can go to Google Earth. Both will work just fine. And what I can do is I'm going to go to the, what is it called? Kelvin Rampton Technology Building, Slick Redwood Campus. And you won't be doing this. This is just for me. Okay. And I'm actually going to draw this area right here. It's just a little more simple for demonstration purposes than this area right here. And what I can do is I can start with a simple screenshot, like I showed earlier, or you can find a map online of the park and you can trace that. And one thing I like about using Google products is that you can do Street View. And what I prefer to do is if I go to Google Earth online, I can log on, and the neat thing I can do here is I can type in my site as well. So let me just go to new map. Okay, and then here's our site. It looks like it's synced from my Google Maps. And what I can do is I can actually, if you notice, the resolution's better here. So I'm actually going to take a new screenshot. And then what I'll do here is if I have any questions about what's going on, I can drop this little guy, my Street View guy, and I can see, oh, okay, that's a Slick sign. Or, okay, that's a bus stop. And this is helpful if you forget things after your site visit. So I want you to know that for your base image, you can use existing maps you find on Google. I will say there are existing maps already of Liberty Park that are floating around the internet. You may use those. However, they may lack some detail. So I want you to use a combination. You can piece things together, use whatever you need. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to drag and drop. Okay, and it may or may not put that into a new file. Looks like it put it into that second window. Or actually, no, put it into my file. That's great. And what I'll do here is I am going to hit Shift and click, remember, to maintain proportion. And I want to fill this page nicely. And I'm just going to rotate this a tiny bit because if you saw, my lines looked a little crooked, my east to west lines. And just a quick fact I want to show you, I want to share, is if we go to View Ruler, Show Ruler, it shows me my ruler in inches, and I can also drag down, if you see here I have a faint line, and I can create what's called guidelines. And if you see that, I can see that my lines are all straight. So you may have to rotate your site plan a little bit to get your lines perpendicular to the page. That'll just make your life a little easier. And then to delete those guides, you can simply highlight and delete those. And then what I'm going to do next is just simply delete that. Okay, so this is really part one of getting things set up. I have my drawing here complete. I have my rules listed below. I have my layers on. And what we'll be doing next is we'll be drawing. So I'll be showing you how to do all of that in the next video. If you have any questions, go ahead and make sure to read the module because I often list additional items there. And one tip before we depart is to make sure to read the discussion that you'll be posting your line work to before finishing. That way you can ensure you're meeting all expectations and rubric guidelines. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one.